Welcome back, YouTube. So in this video, I want to do a comparison in the charts here as far as what I'm seeing and to point out that Bitcoin has an opportunity to do something similar to what Doge has done, right? And I'm showing Doge first. I want to show you exactly what that is, and then we'll take a look at Bitcoin. So pretty much back here in early January, we had a cross between the 14 and the 72. And technically speaking, you have a short-term indicator across a long-term indicator. That is what's known as a death cross, and that indicates that a bearish move is coming in. And typically, we have something like a 14 and a 72. It can typically be significant, right? It's not something as weak as like a 7-day crossing a 14 or a 7-day crossing a 21. This is a stronger indicator. So typically, you will see those that type of price action move in the direction that it's saying. Not always, not 100%, obviously, but it typically works. You can see examples here. The 14 crossing the 72, and that indicated the trend there. It's somewhat lagging, but it gives you an idea of the trajectory of the actual movement. And you'll see that we continue to have the rise, the 14 crossing the 200. Obviously, we continue to have that rise. Then the 72 crossed the 200. Then we're having that rise here. And then you have the 72 crossing the 14. And typically we had that bump up. And then we've technically been going against the grain here with the 14, the 14 crossing the 72. And we consolidated here at the bottom of the 382 level, Fibonacci. So this is technically where we're having the sideways movement and building floor. So we're having that cool down period, not giving up all the gains that we've had on the last run. And we have that cool down period and literally are flattening the 14-day and the 72-day, right? So we take a look here at Bitcoin. We'll see that we're having the 14 across the 72 here. We had a big movement. So technically speaking, even the last couple of days, these green candles are going against the grain. Again, it's not 100%, but technically speaking, we have these indicators here. And this is obviously the reason that we're having this cross here between the 14 and a 72. What that typically means is we've been in a decline overall in the trend for the last 2 weeks, basically. So that's basically what that means. And you'll see that we are crossing the 72. So technically speaking, that's indicating that we're in a bearish trend, right? And technically this also can indicate that we're about to see a more bearish move to the downside. Now, the point I was making was, what we've seen with Bitcoin is that, Dogecoin, is that the coin continued to trend sideways. So we had somewhat of a sell-off, but it kind of balanced out right there where that crossing period is. And so the statement I was making was, does Bitcoin have the opportunity to do something similar, which is have this kind of flattening right here? And I believe it does, right? Because technically what we're looking at here, even when we had the projection off of the 38 level, you'll see that this was a previous ceiling for us, right? It took us a while to break into that 40,000 mark, literally weeks. What I mean by a while. And this is where we ultimately rejected from. And this is a strong rejection. This is a decent rejection here off of that range. And we had some sideways movement. And now we're having that climb up. So I believe we're going to see something similar with Bitcoin as what we saw with the Dogecoin's price action, which is where we have the 14 and kind of consolidating sideways and the 72. And it may actually even trend a lot closer than what we see with Dogecoin as far as the 14 and 72. So these lines may run, pretty much on top of each other because of the price action here. We can certainly see this flatten out relatively quickly. Obviously, it's a little soon to say because we could have a little dip down to the downside here. But ultimately, I believe we're going to have that flattening until we get closer to the halving. And I believe that's the catalyst, obviously, that will continue to push Bitcoin in the long term. But as long as Grayscale is selling and stuff like that, we'll continue to see this trend. I believe this is ultimately very temporary. And we'll ultimately see once those coins stop hitting the market and BlackRock has to continue buying, I believe we'll see some more true price action compared to what we're looking at right now. So I'm just going to keep that in mind. You're looking at it. I don't think we've seen anything huge as far as for shorts. Let's see, up 3% on the day for Bitcoin shorts. Yeah, nothing compared to what it was in October. So not the end of the world here. We're looking at pretty much a flattening of the shorts here. Had some ups and downs, but pretty much has been pretty sideways since November. So coming off a lot of those highs. 14, the shorts were coming up. This was a big move here in early January, but you'll see we have the curve right below the 72-day because they exited those positions. So it looks like they're not counting on this trend, at least not yet. They're not counting on this trend to continue to the downside. And since we're doing the comparisons, let's see where those shorts are. Yeah, what one? That's like 2% on the day. Same movement here. Had some bigger moves, obviously, in early January, but really got out of those positions and slightly higher than what it's been since November. But they literally exited those positions off of that run up the other day. So they have not ran back in, at least yet. So looks like that kind of lets me know that kind of what we talked about in the video, that these coins are starting to kind of flatten. So they're not expecting, at least shorts aren't expecting a sell-off right now because they're not positioning themselves. So maybe they're waiting for evidence or they don't believe it. But as of right now, they have not positioned themselves as to let me know that they believe that the coin is about to go lower. So, or they're expecting the coin to go lower. So that aligns with what we just talked about as far as for whether or not these are going to flatten. And let's just check Ethereum just to kind of see. Yeah, so Ethereum's a little far away because of that huge candle right here. So the 14-day, that's going to take a while to flatten that 14 out. So this will be a few more days, or the end of next week, before we can kind of get an idea where this is going to flatten. We're already building 2 green candles, so these may not even cross depending on how the trend goes. So that's Ethereum's a little out of whack right now with what's going on with the similarities between Doge and Bitcoin. So can't necessarily use that, but ultimately we are looking to see some type of flattening here. Bitcoin has the opportunity to do something similar to what Doge did, which is kind of push off the indicator that we're going to have that further sell down. So ultimately what we're looking at across the market is we're seeing this flattening, and the zones are being established here, slightly consolidating, slightly lower than what we thought initially as far as for the run-ups, but ultimately they're not giving up the gains that they got over like the last few months. This is perfectly normal for coins, for stocks to rest after runs. There'll be many more as they trend into the next bull run. So just kind of keep that in mind for cycles, but ultimately this is very good at these levels. They're not giving up those gains, not filling all those gaps. So we're certainly seeing strength in the market, and we'll just kind of have to monitor it going forward to see where that liquidity is going to come in for the next phase, the next run in these assets. So that's my price update. Let me know your thoughts, comments in the comment section. I'll see you guys in the next video.